Let me take you back. Wait a minute till you.
Green Show on 96.1 FM. Now, with me in the studio is Kiara as usual.
Hi, everyone.
And today we're going to be talking about marine pollution, marine noise, more specifically. It's not really covered a great deal, so we thought we'd give it a go.
Yes, we will.
Yes, and if you've ever been snorkeling or diving, you will probably notice that the ocean can be quite a noisy place, and that sound carries quite a long way underwater. You can hear the whine of an outboard engine from quite a distance, and ambient noise in the open ocean mostly comes from breaking noise on the surface. However, research hydrophones tell us that background sound levels in some parts of the ocean are dominated by noise from shipping. In fact, I think that the fact that ships create quite a lot of noise will not come as a huge surprise to a great deal of people. And I have always assumed that most of the noise came from the engines of ships, those massive machines in the hull that can weigh up to a couple of thousand tons. And this is true, but the amount of noise produced depends on all kinds of things, and it's not the only noise that ships make, and that's what Kiara and I are discussing today. Naughty 1H on the Green Show. Hip hop, hooray! Oh, hello. That's interesting noise. Yes, okay. Now, hopefully, we're going to hear from Kiara, who is going to talk to us about shipping noise and sonar. Can I just put your mic up again and see if we have
Can you hear me?
Yes, that's better. Right.
Great.
Marvellous. Yes, Kiara, you've been researching some of this. What have you discovered?
Well, so let's first discuss a bit the sonar. So, as you mentioned earlier, one of the threats faced by the ocean today is this underwater noise pollution from ships. This is it's due obviously to the growth of in commercial shipping, which has raised in intensity. The intensity of the low frequency noise almost tenfold since the 1960s. So obviously, if before there was noise, but it wasn't that intense. Now it's quite high level. Obviously, because there are more. We transport everything on shipping, on commercial shipping. So the issue basically of anthropogenic sound and its effects on marine life is it's very interesting for the public and also to scientists. When I say anthropogenic, is obviously human created.
Yes.
And so the understanding of many relevant questions has expanded in some areas, although considerable scientific uncertainty generally remains because it's not so easy to find out. And also, I guess there is much less interest in exploring the ocean because no one sees it, as opposed to, for example, noise that would happen on land, because that would bother us much more as humans. Yeah, we don't live underwater. Not yet, maybe. I don't know. That's a thought.
We gave it a go for a while, Jack Cousteau, but yes. Out of sight, out of mind, isn't it?
I think so. That's one of the issues. So the sound is produced as an incidental byproduct of vessels' operation, and it serves no particular function in the transportation of the goods themselves. And because of this, given the potential interference with the acoustic communication in marine life, an important question is whether the sound output from these large vessels can be realistically actually reduced. Of course, there's considerations both technical and practical bearing on this question, but let's look at the sonar to start with. Sonar is active sonar is basically the transmission of sound energy which has a purpose, which is that of sensing the environment by interpreting features of received signals. So basically, you send a sound down, and then it kind of bumps back to you, so you know if there are things around through that.
Okay.
So the people have actually developed sophisticated ways of using sound to probe the marine environment, and there are three types basically. There is high frequency, mid frequency, and low frequency. High frequency is usually bottom mapping multi-beam sonar systems that provide high resolution images of what's at the bottom of the sea, so the bottom features.
Okay.
Then you have mid frequencies, which is tactical military sonar to detect submarines and other underwater objects. So and then there is a low frequency system that detects large objects with a lower resolution over the larger ranges. So, and depending, so marine, we said, is, the Navy and military is mostly mid-frequency. So the extent to which human sonar systems may affect marine life, it depends critically on the system in question. The environment, and it also depends on the environment in which these systems are operated, and what type of animal is actually exposed to them. So these are all characteristics that need to be kept in mind to know. In certain conditions, it appears likely, although it's not certain, is that mid-frequency, so the military sonar, have played some role in marine mammal stranding events. So we had recently some reports of that happening. And these appear also to be more likely to involve deep diving marine mammal species in areas of complex and steep bottom bathymetry. So that's the kind of areas that are more affected, and because of this, basically they got confused. Through the sound, that interrupts the communication between mammals. And if they get confused and communication is lacking, they may actually find themselves in areas where they shouldn't be, and maybe it's a bit too shallow for them, and then they can strand.
Am I right in remembering that whale pods, they have leaders, don't they? Usually a matriarch, and that the whales will follow that matriarch. And I guess if one gets confused, if the matriarch gets confused and can't communicate with the rest of the pod, then yes, that's been blamed for some beachings, I think. It's theory.
Interesting. We go back to some music, and then after this we can look at the importance of studies that have been done on behavioral response of marine mammals to sonar.
Okay, cool.
I wish that I could be like the cool kids, like the cool kids.
Source 96.1 FM, the Cool Kids, and today we are talking about noise, environmental noise in the oceans, all kinds of noise. Now, noise in the oceans first. Those vast engines on board container ships and tankers produce a lot of it, as I'm sure we all know, but as long as there's international trade, there will be shipping, so let's try and understand it a bit better if we can. So, big ships run on something called bunker fuel. It's a very low-grade oil. It's so viscous that it needs to be heated up before it can be pumped into the engines. Think less oil or petrol that you put in your car and more kind of road tar. So you have a giant combustion system on a ship running low-grade oil. Add to that enormous gears and cogs and all the other things you'd associate with a ginormous engine, and all that vibration gets transferred through the hull and into the water, hence noise. At least that's what I thought. In reading about this, though, I was surprised to find that the dominant noise coming from big ships isn't the engines specifically. A lot of it is something called propeller-induced hull vibration. This means that the hull can act as an amplifier for the propeller's turbulence, creating a whole new and louder source of noise. So, a science bit now. Breathe in. It is called vibroacoustic excitation of the hull by propeller action through a fluid, creating fluctuant hydrodynamic loads impinging on acoustic pressure fields. I thought that would take longer to say for some reason. What it means, in other words, is that the propeller creates its own pressure waves, and a big ship turns into a big drum and amplifies them. So control measures are being pursued in the shipping industry. They include vibration isolation mounts for engines, and acoustical absorption units, and insulation for hulls, and more efficient hull shapes, and propeller designs, and all kinds of things to try and counteract this effect. So I've looked at fuel oil and things before in research before. International waters have always been a bit of a wild west when it comes to law enforcement. Obviously, for obvious reasons, I didn't spell that out, but we are getting a little bit better at it. We've got UNCLOS, the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea. A lot of that is being enforced better, more money going into it. Satellites are now tracking oil tankers in busy shipping lanes. and tracking the ones that illegally wash out their tanks, for example. So you just monitor the shipping lanes, track the oil slicks back to the ship, and find out who they are. It's not very complicated. So we're making advancements. However, I think, as we just mentioned before, background noise from shipping levels have doubled, as you say, every decade for the last 6 decades. So that bit ain't getting any better, at least in some parts of the ocean. And scientists monitoring hydrophones, they know this. They're well aware of this, and the papers get published, etc. But it doesn't really come into the public consciousness, at least now and again where there's a whale stranding maybe. But noise, as we said, it doesn't form slicks on beaches, and so human nature largely out of sight, out of mind. So what we really need is we need some sort of work to be done on this. We need these mitigation measures to come on stream, perhaps for fuel efficiency reasons at first, but container ships only seem to get larger, so it would seem a good idea to see noise reduction measured, incorporated into new builds. As we build more and more of these, I think that would possibly be the idea. Retrofitting these ships, possibly going to be too expensive and not realistic, but hopefully new technologies, new hulls, all kinds of fuel saving measures hopefully may be mitigating and reducing noise as well. We can but hope. Howling Wolf on The Green Show. More later.
Some folk build like this, some folk build like that.
Howling Wolf on The Green Show. How are you doing? It's Jules and Kiara in today, and we're talking about noise in the ocean. And so, Kiara, you've been researching some of this. What effect does ocean noise have on wildlife?
Well, welcome back. So, as we were saying, we looked at sonar, so that's quite a strong impact. We also need to look at behavior response studies.
Okay.
Because this actually is where the study exactly, the impact that, of noise on such mammals. And we find that there is increasing evidence that suggests that exposure to intense underwater sound in some settings may cause certain marine mammals to actually strand and ultimately die. Because if you strand, it's really hard then to kind of unstrand yourself, so if that's a term at all. The noise occurs at low frequencies used by baleen whales. So there is a growing evidence it may impact their ability to communicate, and therefore their survival.
Baleen whales use low frequencies to communicate.
Apparently, yes. According to studies.
Whoa! Something I read is that lots of the ship noise is low frequency. It's one of the characteristics of large ships.
And then, if you look at beaked whales, there is some of these strandings associated with mid-frequency active military sonars. This is mostly for beaked whales. Whales, more likely.
Yes.
And then there was also a study done recently, on whether ship noise could extend to the higher frequencies used by toothed whales, and therefore pose similar threats to them. Orcas, like other toothed whales, they actually use mid and high frequencies to communicate and to find their prey. So it seems that this is the case also on the for orcas types.
Right.
And this study in particular about orcas was carried out in the Washington State, so just outside the base, and it shows that ships are responsible for elevated background noise levels, not only at the low frequencies as expected, but also at medium and higher frequencies, including the levels of hertz where the killer whales hear at best. So it means that basically in the coastal environments where marine mammals live, and they live usually within a few kilometers of shipping lanes, the ship noise has a potential to interfere with both the communication and also their echolocation for mammals. Basically, orcas cannot so easily then locate the scarce salmon, and because if the salmon is already scarce and they can't really locate where they are and they can't communicate between themselves to kind of say where the salmon is, then obviously that's gonna impact on their ability to feed themselves. Yeah. So that's quite important. What also this same study found is it seems that transferring quieting technology used by some military vessels to the commercial sector could be a successful noise mitigation strategy.
So secret tech to make ships quieter and undetectable could be transferred to commercial shipping fleets.
Yes, I'm not sure, as you mentioned, perhaps
Awesome.
not looking back at the old ships, but if we were to build something in the future that would impact less, then
Yeah.
that would be definitely.
Oh, that's
But it's also,
interesting.
it was also found that the same study that a way to reduce noise pollution is simply by slowing down. So on average,
Yeah.
each reduction in a ship speed by 1 knot could actually reduce the broadband noise levels by 1 decibel. So that would be something
That's quite a lot, isn't it?
yeah, it is. That's obviously commercial shipping. They rely on the speed of getting from A to B.
Yeah.
But if this could become perhaps a law, an imposed law of some kind, obviously that would be the best and the fastest way to actually do that. So let's see. Maybe this is hopefully this study is not just going to remain a study, but it's going to be picked up on a policy level and made into something a bit more than just words on paper.
Fantastic. Let's hope so.
And welcome back again. Welcome back to the Green Show with Jules and Kiara, myself. So we were basically since we're talking about noise in the ocean, and we also
Yeah.
discussed that noise in the ocean is something that we care less about because we don't hear it. Let's add something that we do hear it, and that's why there's quite a lot to complain about it, which is wind turbine noise. So something that is affecting, and it's actually a good noise because it comes obviously together. It's good for the environment to have wind turbines, but it seems to be annoying to quite a high degree of humans, especially ones living close by, because they say it annoys them, and there is quite a bit of research done on whether that is also harmful for humans. So let's, what kind of noise then comes from these wind turbines? Well, there are 2 types. One is the mechanical noise. This is obviously caused by the gearbox that is the generator of the turbine, so the little engine. The other one is aerodynamic noise. That is basically the coaction of wind with the blades of the turbines. So that's, that's the noise that was really difficult to reduce
Swooshing
anyway.
noise.
The swooshing, that's the swooshing coming out of things. Obviously, there are ways of making it better. In fact, better design and better insulation have made the more recent wind turbines models much quieter than what they used to be. For example, the mechanical noise has been minimized at the design stage and can also be corrected during operation by insulating, so acoustic insulation, curtains, and anti-vibration support footing. So that's the terminology. But basically, you just make sure that the design includes a lower degree, make sure that it's not so noisy. And thanks to that, this mechanical noise today is virtually eliminated. So the turning blades are the main sound source. The aerodynamics noise spans a broad range of frequencies, and it depends on the design of the blades. So, different blades make different noise. And that when the power plant is not operating, the noise is caused only by the flow of the winds that actually cuts through the individual components, which are actually static. So obviously, as you know, when it's windy and you have your windows, etc., you have wind coming through even if you're not moving.
Yeah.
So these are the types of noise. And depending on the frequency, the noise may take the form of, it can be audible or infrasound. I didn't even know what infrasound was, but basically audible is frequencies within the range. Usually it's 20 hertz upwards.
Okay.
That's something we can actually hear as humans.
Yeah.
And then the infrasound is frequencies are below that, so they're not really something we can hear. So
But our bodies can respond to infrasound, can't they? Apparently.
Well, apparently yes, as much as they would, for example, to an earthquake or things like that. It's sounds that you can't really hear, but you may feel the vibrations of it. So there are natural causes, or an airplane or things like that is like the vibration in the air. So so the noise emissions perceivable in residential buildings does not only depend on the noise emissions from the turbines itself, but also on the spatial arrangement with respect to the building, so how far they are. Because sometimes if you're not very close to the turbine itself, you may hear it less than actually if you're just a bit distant. So it really depends on where the building is situated compared to the place.
Okay.
And different countries, they actually put different rules on noise. For example, in Denmark, they established what is the maximum noise that you can have around the residential areas, urban or country settings. So they have different rules. In the UK, actually, there is no specific noise limit for wind turbines.
Right.
There is a higher acceptable noise level in the UK, which is 68 decibel, referring to buildings near roads. So I think the regulation is varied. It's general, what kind of noise or noise pollution as opposed to being specifically aimed at wind turbines. So the question is really whether the noise produced by these turbines actually is harmful to individuals. And there have been different studies. The answer seems to be that it really depends on the individual more than actually the noise. So they found that the irritation that is caused by the noise around wind farms can affect certain individuals, but not all of them.
Right.
So the idea of this, there was a doctor proponent of the wind turbine syndrome, but scientists actually dismissed the idea that there is a syndrome attached to wind turbines. And this syndrome was supposed to say that where the vibrations in the air actually cause headaches, nausea, and panic attacks. That was the idea. She made some studies, said, okay, this is the effect that the wind turbines are going to have people, and let's call this a wind turbine syndrome. But it's been dismissed by scientists, so that's not really. However, what the scientists say is that this whistling sound caused by these turbines can annoy some people, keeping them awake at night, and even causing psychological problems because of the stress that being awake at night may cause them. So it's really very individual. Some people, but it's the same like if you live in a busy town, and the wind turbines are much quieter than actually if you were living, for example, in the center of Falmouth with trucks and at 7 o'clock in the morning coming through. So it really is an individual thing. Some people act and kind of react better to noise around them. Some people don't. So it's not necessarily specifically a syndrome linked to this.
Right.
So a major cause of concern is actually the fluctuating nature of the sound, which is particularly stressful for some people because it is difficult to get accustomed to intermittent noise. It's like if someone is snoring in your room, basically. If the snoring is sort of equal, you tend to actually fall asleep and almost make that into a lullaby. But if it's not...
If you're just dropping off and there's a sudden...
Yeah, if it changes, if there is change in the sound, then you're going to wake and it's going to keep you awake. So that could be a problem.
Okay.
So the wind industry obviously said that if wind turbines were harmful, it would be impossible then to live in a city, given that the sound levels normally present in urban environments are actually much higher than the ones present in sort of in around wind farms. So it's really an individual thing. So it's that's at least what the scientists say. So
well, that was fascinating. Thanks for that.
Let go of everything. Let go of everything.
Hiya, how you doing? If you just joined us, welcome to The Green Show on Source FM. I'm Jules Powis, sitting in for Pete while he's away, and with me is Kiara, and we have been looking at ocean noise today, looking at all kind of aspects. Our final story today, it's not quite so serious. It's an ocean buzz that has been confusing scientists for quite some time, well, baffling perhaps. Ever since hydrophones came along, marine biologists have noticed lots of strange noise emanating from the ocean depths, some more mysterious than others. You may have heard of the bloop. If you haven't, it's an undersea noise so loud that it could be heard on hydrophones 5,000 kilometers apart. This is what it sounds like. Did you hear that? It's a kind of background and then a bloop. One again. Now, that bloop, it may sound a little bit like someone farting in the bath, but that's recorded up 16 times. The actual noise that was recorded is so low frequency that humans can't actually hear it. So, for a while, scientists were seriously looking at the possibility of some kind of unknown giant creature in the depths, because the signature of that bloop is incredibly similar to the sounds known to be made by marine megafauna. And so excitedly, I think amongst conspiracy theorists, this went round like wildfire. There's an enormous giant beast creature living in the depths of the oceans. I heard this story, I thought that could be a possibility and got very excited. However, sadly, after much research, we now know that it is actually the sound of a giant ice quake, and has since been recorded in many other places. Now, we're also a step closer to solving another mystery noise, that of the ocean hum. Now, this is one that has baffled scientists for many years, and this is what it sounds like in real time. Give me a second, and I will play that for you. This is the sound of the ocean hum. If you couldn't quite pick it out, the noise has been described as, like being sat in an airplane, really. It's a regular hum. It sounds very dull. You probably just heard a lot of white noise, but to scientists on hydrophones, it's very much identifiable as being very separate from background ocean noise. Background ocean noise away from shipping lanes. So, what is it? Long time we didn't know. It could be this. Huge clouds of small fish and crustaceans hide in dark, deep water during the day and then rise to the surface to feed at night. It took hydrophones in the Pacific to reveal that the hum actually accompanies that daily rise and fall of the fish migration. So it's something to do with that, we think. Possibly. But what? Well, there are a few ideas. It could be a signal. It could be a general, hello, it's time to float up and eat, mass communication, or it could just be fish farts. Fish emit gas as they change depths in water. In the water column, the gas comes from a swim bladder that all fish have that controls its buoyancy. So, could be fish farts, or it could simply be the noise of fish migration itself, the actual physical noise of that happening. Now, if that is the case, then boffins have worked out that the estimated biomass required to produce that level of noise is around 10 billion tons. 10 billion tons of organisms in the sea making that noise, which is kind of positive. I like it, that's the idea. Whatever it is, the sound raises an interesting question. Why would tiny fish do this? The noise is so loud that it's basically a giant dinner gong, attracting predators from all over the place. To my uneducated viewpoint, it points to the fact that maybe they can't help it. They wouldn't be attracting predators, so it's possibly less likely to be an active piece of communication and more likely to be a side effect. Maybe of swim bladders, maybe farts, or maybe just the noise of them moving. Whatever it is, the ocean, it proves, is still an amazing and mysterious place.
What you waiting for? No, what you waiting for?
George, Ezra, blame it on me. This has been The Green Show. I've been Jules.
And I've been Kiara.
And it's been fun, and we'll talk to you next week.